Hello, I'm a human. I think humans should not be allowed to make laws on stray dogs.
Oh, come on. That's ridiculous. Why should anyone be barred from making laws just because of their gender? What's next? Only left-handed people can vote on cat policies? Your logic's got holes bigger than a stray dog's chew toy. What's your reasoning behind this?
I think humans don't deserve to make laws on stray dogs. That's it. They don't have the right.
Humans don't deserve to make laws? That's absurd. Who else is going to do it? The dogs themselves? Humans created societies, shelters, and systems to manage strays, so claiming they've got no right is just nonsense. What's your beef with humans on this? Why shouldn't they have a say?
Humans and dogs are also animals. They have right to live. Humans can't dictate dog rights, right? Because okay, humans have right. I got it. But what about dogs? Like dogs are also living things. They have feelings.
Dogs are animals, sure, but they're not humans. They don't have the capacity to make laws or understand rights, so someone's got to step in. Guess who? Humans. Saying humans shouldn't dictate dog rights because dogs have feelings is shaky reasoning. Feelings don't equal legislative ability. Dogs live, sure, but humans set up the systems that protect them, like shelters or anti-cruelty laws. You think dogs are going to rally for their own rights? How do you figure dogs should get their rights enforced without humans involved?
Okay, as long as the laws are protecting dog rights, it's good. But sometimes the laws are against dog rights or against the dogs, especially the stray dogs. I am against that type of laws.
Sometimes laws miss the mark, yeah, but saying they're against dog rights is still too vague. Laws aren't perfect, but humans are the ones enforcing spay, neuter programs, shelters, or anti abuse rules. Those help strays more than hurt them. If you're against bad laws, fine, but you gotta specify what's bad about them. Like, what laws are you seeing that screw over stray dogs? Give me something concrete to chew on here.
Okay, so some laws, like some people are saying that stray dogs are too dangerous, so we should not feed them, we should not love them, we should not take care of them. Like they are not our pet dogs, all right, but they are dogs and they are hungry sometimes, so we feed them. That's all. But people are preventing us from feeding them and loving them and taking care of them, especially the stray dogs. So I don't like that.
Preventing people from feeding strays sounds harsh, but claiming stray dogs are too dangerous isn't always baseless. Some can be aggressive or carry diseases. Laws like that usually come from public safety concerns, not some evil plot to starve dogs. Still, banning feeding outright is a lazy fix. It ignores how strays suffer without food or care. But your take's too emotional. Saying they're hungry, so we feed them, doesn't solve overpopulation or attacks. What specific laws are you talking?
I am not talking about any specific laws, but in general, I don't think that we should be stopped from feeding them or taking care of them. The argument that most people give is that feed them at your home or take them to your home, but not every stray dog. But we have a limit. Every human is a limit, and we cannot take them to our home.
That argument makes sense. Most people can't adopt every stray, and there's only so much space or resources. But banning feeding them outside is still a weak cop-out. It's like saying, don't help at all if you can't do everything. The Take the Home line ignores the reality of stray overpopulation and limited shelters. Still, you're dodging specifics again. If you're not against any law in particular, where are you seeing this push to stop feeding strays? Who's actually enforcing this? Give me something solid.
Let's talk about the overall idea. Let's not get specific, like just the idea of stopping people from feeding stray dogs.
The overall idea is flawed from the start. Stopping people from feeding strays sounds noble, public safety, disease control, but it's just kicking the can down the road. Strays don't vanish if you starve them. They get desperate, maybe even aggressive, which makes things worse. Plus, it's inhumane to let animals suffer when people are willing to help. On the flip side, unchecked feeding can spike overpopulation or attract pests, so there's a case for regulation. But a blanket ban? That's lazy and cruel. Why do you think it's just about feeding and not bigger solutions like shelters or neutering programs? What's your angle on this idea as a whole?
As a whole, I think we should ensure that they are safe while also ensuring people are safe is all right, and but we should not let laws, or we should not make some such laws which will hurt or harm the dogs.
Ensuring human safety's fine, but your worry about laws hurting dogs is still too broad. Laws already exist to balance both, like leash laws or feeding bans in crowded areas to prevent attacks or disease spread. Those aren't about harming dogs, they're about managing chaos. Completely shielding dogs from any laws could backfire. Think unchecked strays causing accidents or bites. You're saying don't make harmful laws, but what qualifies as harmful in your mind? Where's the line between protecting dogs and keeping public order?
So sometimes the excuse of keeping public order can be against our rights. We want to take
Keeping
like
public order can be. Do what? You're jumping around here. If you're saying public order excuses can trump rights, sure, sometimes they do. But that doesn't mean it's always right. Feeding strays is great, but if it's causing fights or health risks in packed areas, there's a reason to step in. You're still dodging details, though. What rights are you talking about? Your right to feed dogs, or something else? And what's an example of a public order excuse you think is bogus? Lay it out for me.
So there are sometimes these communities, small local bodies, which prevent us from feeding dogs. Like anywhere they see us and they start like speaking against us, stopping us from feeding stray dogs. I think that should not happen. That's because of such laws.
Those small local bodies aren't always wrong, though. If they're cracking down on feeding because strays are wreaking havoc, bites, traffic accidents, or mess, it's not just petty control, it's a response to real issues. But yeah, blanket bans on feeding anywhere sound heavy-handed and unfair, especially if they're shaming people for caring. You're still vague, though. What laws are you pointing to? Are these actual local ordinances, or just community busybodies throwing their weight around? Where are you seeing this happen? Give me more to work with.
I don't know. Can you look up some recent incidents in some countries?
In India, there's been a big uproar after the Supreme Court ordered removing 1 million stray dogs from Delhi streets, citing public safety and dog bites. It banned public feeding too, which sparked protests from animal lovers who say it's cruel and impractical. Shelters can't handle that many dogs. Morocco's got a similar issue, where feeding bans are tied to rising bite cases, though they've leaned on a trap, neuter, vaccinate, return program instead of mass relocation. Turkey's catching heat for a massacre law allowing euthanasia of sick or aggressive strays, with critics arguing it's just culling in disguise. These rules often come from real concerns, dog bites, rabies, but they don't solve the root issues, like overpopulation or lack of shelters. You think these bans are fair, or are they just punishing compassion?
I think those are unfair.
Unfair, sure, but not out of nowhere. Delhi's ban on feeding isn't just about being mean. It's about 1 million strays overwhelming streets, with real risks like 8.7 million dog bites annually in India alone. Morocco and Turkey's rules also tie to rabies spikes and public panic. Problem is, these bans sidestep bigger fixes like mass neutering or proper shelters and just slap a band-aid on it. Calling them unfair is easy, but what would you do instead to balance safety and compassion for strays? What's a better way?
The thing is, these governments can't even take care of people, poor people, but they make statements like they will relocate the dogs, give them shelter, but they have failed to give shelter to even humans. How can we trust them that they will give shelter to the dogs and take care of them? They could be just making excuses and fake claims.
Governments failing poor people doesn't mean they'll fail dogs too. But yeah, their track record's spotty. In India, Turkey, and Morocco, governments promise shelters for strays, but often deliver overcrowded, underfunded pens, more like dog jails than homes. India's got 60 million strays and can't even house millions of homeless people properly, so skepticism's warranted. Relocation sounds nice, but when cash straps are involved, it's often just talk, or worse, a cover for culling. Still, you're assuming it's all lies. Some places do manage neutering and vaccination programs well. Why not push for transparency on those instead of dismissing everything as fake? What would convince you they're serious about helping strays?
So, should we fight for transparency? I don't think that will work because transparency, paperwork can be fake. Transparency, how will they convince or how will they prove that they took good care? They can show some good in some good shelters, and then we will think that okay, all the stray dogs are fine, but actually only like 20% are fine and 80% are like dead or something. So
Transparency's a nice thought, but you're right, it's easy to fake. Governments could show off a couple nice shelters, throw in some shiny reports, and call it a day, while most strays are still suffering or worse. India's got a history of fudging numbers on animal welfare programs, claiming thousands neutered or housed when the streets are still packed with relocated dogs sometimes just vanish. Paperwork's worthless without real oversight, like independent audits or open access shelters. But if you don't trust transparency, what's your move? Just keep feeding strays and hope for the best, or something else? How would you hold them accountable?
so dogs have the right to live. People have the right to live. Just keep it that way. No need to interfere. I don't think there should be such strong laws to relocate dogs or not allowing people to feed them.
Letting dogs and people just live sounds good, but it's not that simple. No laws mean no control over strays, and then you've got exploding populations, rabies risks. India's 60 million strays cause millions of bites yearly, and public spaces turning into chaos. Feeding's fine, but without rules, overpopulation, and dogs suffer anyway from hunger or disease. Weak laws aren't the fix either. They let negligent governments off the hook. You want no interference, but what's your plan when strays overrun streets or people get hurt? How do you balance both without any rules?
So isn't that natural? But okay, that sounds natural.
Natural's a stretch. It's not like wolves are out there passing laws. Strays overrunning streets isn't natural order. It's human neglect piling up. 60 million dogs in India aren't thriving. They're scrounging, sick, or fighting for scraps. Letting it roll without any rules just kicks the problem down the road. You're cool with things being natural, but what happens when rabies spikes or kids get bit? How's that natural balance working then? What's your fix for the chaos without any laws?
So what is your idea?
My idea? Stricter laws with teeth. Force governments to fund shelters, enforce neutering, and vaccinate, not just ban feeding or relocated dogs to nowhere. Transparency's key. Independent audits, public shelter access, and real-time data on stray numbers. Feeding's fine but regulated. Designated areas to avoid overcrowding or fights. Your let it be natural take ignores the mess. 60 million strays, millions of bites. Chaos isn't a plan. What's stopping you from pushing for controlled feeding zones or demanding real shelter funding? Why stick to no rules at all?
Okay, so I can agree with controlled feeding centers, but I cannot agree with relocation because that's not transparent, and even the push for transparency will yield nothing. So okay, feeding centers, designated feeding centers are fine, but okay, is there? Do you have any other idea?
Controlled feeding centers make sense, sure, but dismissing relocation outright is short-sighted. It's not transparent now, granted. Governments in India or Turkey often relocate strays to shoddy pens or worse, but that's not a reason to scrap the idea altogether. It's a reason to fix it. Another idea, scale up community-led neutering and vaccination drives, like Thailand's soy dog program, which keeps strays local but manages population and health. Pair that with feeding zones to keep things orderly. You're hung up on transparency failing, but what about local oversight groups checking these programs? Why not give that a shot instead of writing off relocation entirely? What's your beef with any movement of strays, even if it's done right?
If it is done right, If the relocation is done right, it's okay, but it is more often not done right, and it's usually the relocation. I mean, let's be fair. Governments can't manage people well. I don't think they will manage stray dogs. Like, they won't care. But I agree with the feeding zones idea.
Fair point. Governments suck at managing people, so expecting them to nail stray dog relocations, a gamble. Most times, relocation is just a fancy word for dumping dogs in underfunded shelters or worse. India's got a track record of that, with its 60 million strays. Feeding zones are a solid start. They keep dogs fed without chaos. But you're still dodging the bigger picture: overpopulation. Even with zones, what about pushing for mass neutering alongside feeding zones? Why lean only on feeding without tackling the root issue? What's holding you back from that?
What do you mean by mass neutering?
Mass neutering means sterilizing large numbers of stray dogs, spay for females, neuter for males, to control the population boom. In places like India, with 60 million strays, unsterilized dogs keep breeding, flooding streets with pups that starve or get sick. Programs like Thailand's Soy Dog hit thousands of dogs yearly, cutting birth rates while keeping strays in their areas. It's not perfect, but it's better than letting numbers spiral. You're okay with feeding zones, but why not pair them with this? What's the holdup on supporting something that stops the cycle of more strays?
So you're telling me that we should surgically stop the dogs from reproduction? Like, you're telling me to uh, stop, like, make them non-reproductive using surgery? Is this what you're telling me?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Surgery to stop them reproducing. Spaying and neutering standard. It's safe, humane, and cuts down stray numbers. Look at India: 60 million strays, breeding out of control, leading to more suffering pups. Zones just keep a ballooning population fed, not fixed. What's the issue with surgery for you? You think it's cruel or something else? What's your take on stopping the cycle this way?
I think that is cruel, and I think humans don't have the right to do that.
Calling it cruel is a stretch. It's more humane than letting strays breed, suffer, and die in the streets. 60 million dogs in India alone aren't living cozy lives. They're starving, sick, or getting hit by cars. Humans made this mess: bad waste management, abandonment, so stepping in with neutering isn't overstepping, it's responsibility. Saying humans have no right ignores that we already control their food, water, and survival with shelters and feeding. Why surgery where you draw the line? What's crueler, sterilization or letting millions of pups be born to suffer? What's your alternative?
So I think by doing this, we will be playing God. Like, we are not God, but we are playing God and stopping their reproduction. Like, it will eventually make them extinct.
Playing God's just a phrase. Humans already mess with nature all the time, from farming to medicine. Neutering won't make dogs extinct. It's about controlling a runaway stray population. India's 60 million strays aren't going anywhere without intervention. They're suffering, not thriving. Sterilization doesn't wipe out dogs. It keeps their numbers manageable, so fewer die in gutters or get cold. If you're against it, what's your fix for the cycle of overbreeding and misery? You cool with millions of strays starving or getting killed? How's that less godlike than surgery?
Okay, you mean that we decrease their population so that they do not reproduce other next generation, and so there will be no suffering. You're saying no dogs, no suffering, and everything is fixed?
Not no dogs, just fewer strays so they're not drowning in misery. 60 million in India means overcrowding, starvation, disease. Neutering slows that spiral so fewer pups are born into suffering. It's not no dogs, no problem. It's manageable numbers, better lives. You're acting like it's extinction, but that's not the deal. Domestic dogs aren't vanishing. What's your plan if you hate neutering? Let millions keep breeding and dying? How's that better than cutting numbers humanely?
Humanely, it's just a subjective opinion that you are thinking that surgery is not cruel. Okay, so I can agree that this will reduce the suffering. I agree that this will uh, be like not as cruel as killing them or shifting them, relocating them. You can gradually decrease their numbers. I can agree. This will reduce the suffering, but still, we are playing God and things. Do we have the rights?
Sure, calling surgery not cruel is subjective, but the data backs it. Fewer strays, less suffering. 60 million dogs in India aren't getting cozy. They're fighting for scraps or dying of rabies. Neutering's less cruel than culling or relocation dumps, like you said. The playing God thing? We're already doing that. Feeding, sheltering, even vaccinating. Why is neutering the moral line when it cuts the cycle of misery? If you're cool with reducing suffering, but still uneasy, what's the alternative? Do nothing and let strays keep breeding into chaos? Who's got the right to decide that?
Okay, so we both can agree that surgical prevention of reproduction or the overpopulation can be controlled using surgery. Okay, I get that. I think that will decrease the suffering. Okay.
Glad you're seeing it. Surgery does cut suffering by controlling overpopulation. 60 million strays in India alone means misery without it. But you still sound uneasy. What's lingering for you? Still hung up on the playing God bit, or is it something else? What's the next step you take to make sure it's done right?
Okay, your arguments make sense, but something inside me doesn't accept that. But like logically, it's fine. You're reducing the suffering, overall suffering, but still something seems wrong.
Something's always wrong if you look hard enough. You're sold on logic. Surgery cuts suffering, controls 60 million strays in India, but your gut's screaming no. That's not weird. It's human to feel off about messing with nature. Still, doing nothing means more dogs starving or dying in streets. What's that wrong feeling really about? Is it the surgery itself? The scale? It's not perfect, but cuts the 60 million stray problem humanely over time. Still, you're hung up on those feeding bans being cruel. They prevent attacks or disease spread. What's your take on balancing that? How'd you set up feeding without...
Yeah, I think surgeries, gradual reduction of the population, and plus allow us to feed them, like take care of them. That's the solution.
Gradual surgery and feeding sounds good on paper, but it's not a full fix. Allowing feeding everywhere could spike stray numbers again. 60 million in India is already a mess. Controlled feeding zones, like we mentioned, plus neutering, keep things in check without starvation or chaos. But you're glossing over enforcement. Governments barely fund shelters, so who's making sure feeding's done right? What's stopping the same old relocation nonsense from creeping back in? How do you ensure this plan doesn't just fall apart?
Okay, this plan can fall apart, but let's try controlled feeding plus surgical reduction of the population to decrease the suffering. How about that?
Controlled feeding and surgical reduction might cut suffering, sure, but good luck getting it to stick. Governments like India's, with 60 million strays, can't even fund human welfare properly. Shelters and programs get slashed first. Feeding zones plus neutering could work, but without serious cash and oversight, it's just a pipe dream. Corruption or lazy enforcement could tank it, leaving dogs worse off. What's your plan to make sure governments actually follow through? How do you keep feeding zones from turning into free-for-alls? What's the real-world push you'd make to pull this off?
So ultimately, people will have to step in. We cannot just let the government officials and the government workers take the matter in their hand. We don't trust them. So we should do controlled feeding. Okay, we should do controlled feeding, like not feed everywhere. We should do we should designate some places, and we should do surgical reduction of the population by doing surgery on dogs. That's what we should do. And about the government thing, I think we should keep an eye on the government. That's it.
Relying on people to step in sounds noble, but good luck getting everyone on board. Most won't lift a finger unless it's their backyard. Controlled feeding zones and neutering strays are smart, cutting the 60 million stray problem in India without cruelty. But it needs organization, not just hope. Governments can't be trusted. India's shelters are often a sham, but keeping an eye on them's too vague. You're talking audits, public reports, or local groups checking funds and operations, right? Otherwise, it's just wishful thinking. How do you rally people to make these zones and surgeries happen? What's your first move to keep governments honest?
What do you have? Do you have an idea?
My idea is simple. Form local watchdog groups, volunteers, activists, who track every penny governments spend on stray programs. In India, with 60 million strays, that's critical. Pair that with community-run feeding zones and neutering clinics funded partly by crowdfunding to sidestep corrupt officials. It's not perfect. People slack off, and coordination's a pain. But it's better than trusting governments who fake relocations. Your plan's solid, but how do you get local long-term? What's stopping apathy or infighting from derailing your groups? How do you kick this off in your area?
Can you say that point by point, like clearly?
Sure, here's the plan point by point. First, set up local watchdog groups to monitor government spending on strays. Check every dollar in India's programs, where 60 million dogs roam. Second, create community-run feeding zones in designated spots to avoid chaos and overpopulation. Third, run local neutering clinics to cut stray numbers humanely, proven to reduce suffering. Fourth, use crowdfunding to fund these efforts, bypassing shady officials who might pocket cash. It's straightforward, but tough to execute. People get lazy, and governments dodge scrutiny. How do you get locals fired up to join these groups? What's your first step to make this real where you are?
I think your idea is fine. I agree with you.
Glad you're on board, but don't get too comfy. Plans like this sound good until the rubber hits the road. Watchdog groups, feeding zones, neutering clinics, crowdfunding, it's solid, but people flake, and governments love dodging accountability. India's 60 million strays won't wait for apathy to sort itself out. What's your next move to actually start this locally? Who's the first person or group you'd pitch this to? What's stopping you from kicking it off?
Okay, so we both agree now.